Hi, this video will walk you through VVM401 4G IoT gateway setup, configuration and basic troubleshooting. The gateway is provided with various input and output ports. We start from the DC power jack connector. Here we can connect an SMPS power supply 9 to 30 volt DC. Then we move on to the RS485 connector. This is used to connect to RS485 RTU slave devices. We have RS232 connector. Here we use this to connect to RS232 legacy devices. There is a jumper setting in between to select either between RS485 and RS232. This is the nano SIM card connector, and here we have the micro SD card connector. The micro SD card is optional and it is used for data logging. Before we turn on the device, ensure that the 4G LTE antenna provided is connected to the 4G slot. For devices having Ethernet, we have the Ethernet connector. The LAN, we can connect the LAN plug, the LAN cable over here. At the top section, we have isolated input and outputs, which also can be used for basic connection. Now this is a Wi-Fi device, and it will attempt to set up to configure and connect to the router. For first time configuration, configure your router or your mobile hotspot to the following settings: SSID IoT gateway and the password IoT@1234. Configure the router and then turn on this device. The device is going to search for the router, and it will get connected to the router. Alternately, if no hotspot or router is available, the device is going to set up its own access point, which again can be used to configure and set up the device. Now the name of the access point is dependent on the name of the gateway device. Every gateway device shipped has got a unique device ID. Check your data sheet for your unique device ID and password. And once your laptop is connected to this device, type in 192.168.4.1 in the IP address section provided by the Chrome browser. Next, we will walk you through the online web page configuration and settings. So once we have ensured that our gateway is connected to the router or the mobile hotspot that we have set up, open a laptop or a desktop, connect your laptop to the same network, and open CRAB or any suitable browser and type in the following details. Every device is shipped with a unique device ID. So check for the unique device ID. In this case, this is VVM401_1056. Type .local.local at the end. It prompts for username and password. The default username is admin and the password is admin@1234. Once we sign into the main page, we get the dashboard, which shows various tabs. The default tab is the home tab, which shows the model name, the firmware version, the server connectivity, the status of inputs and outputs. If a SIM is inserted, it shows the IMEI number, and it shows the Ethernet status, the SD card status, the total storage capacity and the available storage capacity. Also, it shows the IP address of the gateway, which was assigned by the router. Click on network Here we can adjust the gateway parameters. If the internet is to be provided via the cellular 4G network, click on cellular, else click on Ethernet or on Wi-Fi, depending on the parameters that you want. Current value is cellular. If you want to change, you can press the value here, type the value here and press submit. To receive SMS alerts, enter the receiver phone number in this location. And here, enter the SMS duration with which the messages will be the SMS will be sent to your mobile device. The default gateway SSID and password is IoT gateway and IoT@1234. You can change the settings here if required. If you require this to be connected to a new router. Here we can select the Ethernet type, that is the Ethernet can be configured for DHCP or static IP depending on the router assignation. If static IP is to be entered, enter the following: the IPv4 address, the subnet mask, the default gateway, and the DNS server details assigned by the static IP. In case of DHCP, all these values are automatically assigned by the DHCP server. The default value is DHCP. Next, click on MQTT tab. Go to Client Server. Here, enter the details I have queried. First is the MQTT server details. By default, it's a public broker named as broker.hivemq.com. The user can enter his own corporate MQTT server details here. Next, enter the MQTT port. It's either 1883 for plain MQTT or 8883 for MQTT over SSL or secured MQTT. Enter the desired topic name, the username and password if provided by the broker. Also enter the MQTT publish interval. This is the duration over which messages are automatically published to the broker. In case of secured MQTT, we need to upload the CA certificates for authentication and verification. We can choose the file and upload the relevant CA certificates provided by the broker. Under RS485 tab, we can select the baud rate of the slave devices as per the drop-down. The default baud rate is 9600. The RS485 mode is set to either Modbus or transparent serial. In Modbus, it's assumed that all the devices are connected. The devices that are connected are all Modbus slave devices. For transparent serial, the raw data that is sent by the RS485 or RS232 device will be sent directly without any processing to the gateway. To select the RS485 or RS232, choose the To select either RS485 or RS232, select the appropriate jumper value which is located in between the RS485 port and the COM port, that is the RS232 port. Moving over to Modbus. Here we enter the basic details like the initial register, that is the register from which the device values are to be read, the total number of registers to be read. We can enter a maximum of 50 registers. The slave IDs from which the devices are to be read, the slaves are to be read, and the function code. The function code depends on the type of data that is fetched from the slave devices. Various data types such as input coils, input registers, holding registers, they can be set depending on the function code parameters. Also, we can set the data type, where if you want the data to be retrieved in a 16-bit unsigned in format or a 32-bit float format. Some devices transmit the high byte first, some devices transmit the high word first, and some devices transmit the low word first. So depending on the device configuration, you can select the transfer format at this section. By default, the Modbus is configured to work over RTU. To select Modbus TCP, click on Modbus TCP, configure the initial register and the number of registers to be read, the function code. The slave ID will not be accessible here because of Modbus TCP IP settings. Click on the number of servers or number of slaves from which the device, click on the number of servers from which the device has to be, we have to read the data. Type the IP addresses of each slave and click on submit. After reboot, depending on the configuration, the Modbus master is going to fetch data from these IP addresses and transmit it to the buffer. Once we have configured the Modbus settings, move over to SD card. If an SD card is inserted in the slot, we can download the Excel data in CSV format over here. Move on to RTC calibration. By default, the values are calibrated. In order to calibrate, we can click on Calibrate RTC, enter the date time values and the time zone depending on your country, and click on Adjust RTC. Move on to the next tab, the General Settings. Here, once we have made any configuration or any change in the settings, we need to restart the module. So we can go here, click on Restart to restart the module. Restore to default tab is going to restore all the settings to their initial factory values. SD card can be formatted by clicking on this tab. If the vendor has provided for a new firmware, we can update the firmware by clicking on Choose File Location. Now do this with caution, as if any random firmware is updated, the device will not be working. Once we have made all the settings, we need to restart the device from the web page, and then again we need to click on the Home tab. Once the gateway is connected to the router, we can see the Home tab with the new settings. The default server connectivity in this case is cellular. We are transmitting the data. The data is being transmitted, which is indicated by this green dot. The IMEI number, the SIM card details, the Ethernet details, and the SD card details are all displayed in this page. Now, one thing to note, for Ethernet, the Ethernet will work either for Modbus TCP IP or it can work as an Ethernet gateway. So if Ethernet gateway is selected as the main network gateway, Modbus TCP IP will be deactivated. Click on Sign Out to sign out from the device.